When Sylvanas returned to Silvermoon, the reception was warm enough, though her heart was far too raw to take comfort in it. She wasn't brought to the grand council chamber she expected, but to a smaller side room where thick rugs softened the stone beneath, quieting each step. Portraits and statues adorned the chamber, though in modest measure, tokens of remembrance rather than grandeur. Where a great hall might boast a vast table fit for 20, here stood only a small polished one, flanked by 2 inviting chairs. Upon it rested a decanter of wine and a pair of waiting glasses. A hearth fire burned steady, its warmth joined by the soft gleam of candles, and the chamber offered welcome, not in magnificence, but with the ease of quiet comfort. On any other day she might have admired it, but with her grief still breaking over her in waves, and her mission pressing heavy on her shoulders, she could not enjoy the warmth of the place. Anasterian gestured toward a chair. "Thank you, Your Majesty. If it please you, I prefer to stand." "It would please me if you sat. Your task has been a painful one." She knew an order when she heard one, even wrapped in velvet words, and so she took a seat. He poured himself wine, offering her a glass, but she shook her head. "Nothing for me, thank you." "To business, then. Tell me your report and your conclusion." She recounted everything, the scene of the ambush, the troll-poisoned arrows, the signs that spoke to Horde involvement. At last, she placed her final piece of evidence before him, the arrow taken from her father's steed wrapped in cloth. "I was prepared to agree with your assertion, Your Majesty, until my father's horse returned, with this in his side." For a long moment the king only stared at it. Then he rose and turned his back to her, staring into the fire. "Your father always spoke well of you. Difficult as this situation must be, you have displayed resolve and dedication to your duty. Your parents died as they lived, serving the crown, and protecting the kingdom and doing what was best for their people." He turned, his gaze piercing. "I believe you will do the same." "I trust that is so, my liege." At her nod, he lifted the arrow, blood still dried on its tip. "Your investigation was thorough, and this does seem to confirm your suspicion that the Horde, not simply the trolls, was behind the slaughter. But it is of no use to us, not if we both want to do what is best for the people." Then, without hesitation, he dropped the arrow into the flames. Sylvanas sprang forward, trying to snatch it from the hearth, but Anasterian's hand closed around her wrist. "What are you doing? That was the only way we could prove what happened!" His voice remained calm. "I've seen war, Sylvanas. So have your parents. It is a horrible thing. The troll attacks already cost us in lives and in the faith of our people that we will keep them safe. This is not our war. It is now. It is only if we choose to make it so." Her disbelief broke into sharp words. "My father once told me you were wise to treasure those bold enough to speak truth to you. Did he lie?" Displeasure flickered across his face, but he did not raise his voice. "He did not lie. I do treasure you for what you have uncovered, but I must also speak truth to you. Stoking fears of invasion and mysterious monsters can only bring harm to this kingdom. We are safe, Sylvanas. They will never take our land. We have the Sunwell to protect us, and I have every faith in your Farstriders to defend us should the need arise. Your parents always did what was best for our people, even if they disagreed. Will you carry that legacy forward, or will you defy your king?" She heard her heart scream against his reasoning, but she knew her parents would have obeyed, and so must she. "Will you at least allow me to double our patrols? Send us extra arms and supplies. We know the danger is out there. The Farstriders must be ready to meet it." "I cannot see the need for such measures. Your parents journeyed beyond the Sunwell's protection, and for their fate I am deeply sorry. But I must have your word, Ranger General. You must not speak of this to anyone. I cannot be looking over my shoulder uncertain of your loyalty." "I understand your reasoning, my liege, and I will do as my parents have. I remain a loyal subject to my king." He nodded, relieved. "I value this more than you know. Comfort yourself with the knowledge that in this choice, you are truly serving your people." She bowed and left, her face calm, her heart afire. She would honor her word, but she had chosen her phrasing carefully. She would not speak of it, but nothing could stop her from seeking justice herself. The days that followed blurred together, their edges dulled by grief. The Windrunner family stood at the heart of a ceremony steeped in reverence and sorrow, honoring their fallen parents and the Farstriders who had perished beside them. The bodies were swathed in mort cloth dyed in Windrunner colors, each name carefully embroidered in bold thread. Flowers of every shade spilled around the stands which held up the coffins, and for a full day the fallen lay for a final farewell, so those they had served in life could bow their heads and whisper their goodbyes. Sylvanas, Verisa, and Lirath stood sentinel by the wrapped forms, clad in mourning clothes, the family crest emblazoned on their tabards. Alleria was absent, and the void her absence left was keenly felt. Lirath looked stricken, his youth emphasized by the stark black of his garb. He had never been good at concealing his emotions, and here they burned raw on his face. Each passing second seemed an agony for him. At last, unable to hold his silence, he approached Sylvanas. She braced herself, ready to offer comfort, perhaps even reconciliation after the rift between them. But his words were not what she expected. "Train me." The request was not new. He had whispered it to her many times over the years, half in jest, half in longing. But this time was different. This time it was not the plea of a child or the insecurity of a youth. It was a demand, spoken by one thrust violently into adulthood by grief's merciless hand. Sylvanas took his arm gently and led him away from the mourners, her voice low. "We will talk about this later," she said. But he shook his head, his tone sharp with new hardness. "No, we will talk about it now." She blinked, startled. "I know you're in shock, but we've discussed this before." His eyes burned and his voice broke with anger. "Everything has changed now. When I asked before, it was in a world of softness, of privilege, of wine and song and laughter and family. That world's gone now, and it's never coming back. You and Alleria and Verisa, you at least get to strike at the monsters who took them from us." Her throat tightened. She could not deny his pain, yet she also knew he was wrong. That world of music and joy was not gone forever. It would return, as surely as dawn after night. That was why they fought, to preserve it for him, for others like him. He could not see it now, but Sylvanas could. She wanted more for him than the path she and her sisters had chosen. They had been forged in the violence of their mother's discipline, tempered against steel and blood. But Lirath, her little lord son, was different. He had been spared that cruelty. His gift was music, not war. And Sylvanas swore he would never taste that bitter evil that shadowed their world. But Lirath's voice cracked with despair. "Everything feels empty now. Frivolous. Mother and father are dead, and I'm wasting my life. That cannot be what they would have wanted." Sylvanas' patience thinned, though her heart ached. Her frustration seeped through her words. "Lirath, do you know how hard it was on them that all their daughters followed Mother's path? A path of danger, of violence, where we could die at any moment. Don't you think they sighed with relief knowing that at least one of their children might be safe? Don't you think Alleria and Verisa and I do?" The truth struck him like a blow. His jaw clenched, his eyes shadowed with conflict. He understood, perhaps, but he could not agree, not when grief burned so fiercely. Still, she pressed on, her voice breaking with fierce love. "It's hard enough having to bury mother and father, to mourn them. Do you think I want to bury you, mourn you? I don't. I won't, and that's why I refuse to teach you." There was silence, then Lirath straightened, his expression hardening with something unfamiliar. For the first time, he looked like a stranger. "Of all of us, I thought you would believe in me, but you don't." He hesitated as if to say more, then stopped. With a curt nod, sharp as a blade's edge, he turned and walked away. Something within him seemed to snap in that moment, a fracture Sylvanas felt in her own chest. Her hands twitched, aching to reach for him. Her heart screamed to follow, but she forced herself still. Let him be angry. Let him live to hate me for the rest of his long, full, safe life, she thought, bitter tears threatening to rise. Verisa, silent until now, stepped closer, her gaze lingering on their brother's retreating form. Sylvanas' voice was thick when she spoke. "Verisa, go after him. He shouldn't be alone right now. You need to be there for him, as I cannot." Verisa saw the anguish in her sister's eyes, the yearning to run after their brother, to hold him, to soothe him. But Sylvanas' new mantle bound her fast, heavier than any chain. Her position would not allow her to be the one to chase him. Verisa inclined her head gently. Of course. Her voice was soft, and she turned away to follow Lirath into the crowd. He needs you, not me. He doesn't want me. I'm sorry, little Lord Sun, but I made you a promise you don't even remember. With love and courage, I will keep you safe, Sylvanas thought. And so Sylvanas was left alone, standing sentinel beside the shrouded forms of her parents. The heat of the day waned, shadows lengthened, and the mourners trickled away one by one. By the time the moon and stars crowned the sky, silence had fallen. It was just her and the stillness. Then a voice broke it. Sylvanas. She turned. Nathanos stood there, awkward as ever, a cloth-covered plate balanced in his hands. She eyed the dish warily. What is it? His answer was dry as kindling. It's a troll's head. What do you think it is? Food. I'll wager you've not eaten a bite since yesterday. I don't think you want to fall flat on your face when you're formally named Ranger General. He was right, of course. She had stood all day, parched and hollow, yet had touched neither food nor water. The thought of eating twisted her stomach. Her parents would never enjoy such simple things again. But Nathanos knew her too well. He saw her drifting toward that thought, and before she could spiral deeper, his hand pressed lightly against her back, guiding her away from the stands holding up the coffins. He led her outside beneath the silver glow of the moon. There, he set the plate in her lap. She opened her mouth to confess her thirst, only to find him already holding out a water skin. She took it with a small nod, drinking deeply. The water was cold, crisp, like it had been drawn fresh from the Elrondar itself. For a moment it reminded her she was alive. The body demanded what the heart denied. Let me take you home, Nathanos offered. But Sylvanas shook her head. She could not bear the thought. Home, where her father's laughter would never again warm the halls, where her mother's sharp voice would no longer cut through the air. No dancing at their hidden glades in Eversong, no songs with Lirath's music lifting their spirits. That life was gone. And still her thoughts spiraled. Did they die quickly? How many foes did her mother fell before she was taken down? Had her father suffered? Which of them had been forced to watch the other die first? The questions gnawed like wolves, the weight of them pressed until she thought she might break. Nathanos' voice cut through. You need food and rest. I'm fine. His tone hardened. You're too smart to say that. Do I have to pin you down and force feed you? Because I will. Not even that threat stirred the faintest smile from her. His frown deepened, his face carved into stern lines. No one else is coming now. It's just us. Sit. Eat. At last she yielded. Slowly, reluctantly she ate. Each bite was heavy, not from taste but from grief. Still, she forced the food down, each swallow a small defiance against despair. Her strength ebbed with every passing moment. At last her body gave way. She sagged, exhausted, and without thought she leaned against him. His shoulder was rough beneath her cheek, solid as stone, warm as fire. Her voice came as barely more than breath. Just for a moment, I will close my eyes. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to rest. The storm of grief did not vanish, but it quieted. And in that fragile silence, sleep found her. It was dreamless, thankfully. And beneath the stars, Sylvanas Windrunner, the future Ranger General of Quel'Thalas, closed her eyes and slept. The following morning was her swearing in as Ranger General. Sylvanas would have loved nothing more than to remain in bed, drifting between half sleep and half wake, letting exhaustion cradle her. But a voice stirred at the back of her mind, insistent, unyielding. She knew she had to rise. She would not be seen as a weak Ranger General. She could not disappoint her mother. Come hell or high water, she would make her mother proud. Her clothes were already laid out, not the servants, she thought. Nathanos would never have allowed anyone near her chambers. It had to be him, setting out the armor she would need for the day. When she entered Farstrider Retreat, Sylvanas carried herself with her head high. Even if her face was pale with grief, she betrayed no hint of vulnerability. Nathanos could not yet accompany her. He was not yet a Farstrider. But Sylvanas drew quiet strength from seeing Lirath clad in armor, her grief lending her an air of solemn beauty, the kind born not of youth, but of sorrow endured. A recall had been sent out to every Farstrider, though Ilaria had not yet answered. Her whereabouts were always difficult to pin down, so Sylvanas was not surprised. Lorthamar, the highest-ranking Farstrider other than Sylvanas, was tasked with the swearing in. As the last stragglers filed into the chamber, he stepped forward, his voice steady and solemn. There is always sorrow when naming a new Ranger General. It means that we have lost one, even as we stand poised to gain another. So before we continue, I would like to take a moment to speak of Sylvanas Windrunner. Many of you have served your whole lives under her. She was brave, clear-headed, stalwart, and bold. When we received the news, perhaps you, like me, simply could not believe such a fierce spirit was gone. There are many stories about her valor and skill, but there is one that exceeds all the others, because it tells not only of Lirath's battle prowess, but also of how deeply she cared about the Farstriders she led. Who here was present at the battle's beginning? 4 hands lifted into the air. A pang of regret struck Sylvanas. Why had she never asked her mother to tell the tale herself? Now Sylvanas would only hear it in legends. The things we wish to ask those who are gone always strike us when it is too late. The tale of the Battle of the 7 Arrows began. The Amani had been silent for a season, their drums stilled, their movements hidden in the shadowed forest. Then, without warning, they struck. It was no common raid, but a carefully laid assault, with their fiercest warriors in the front ranks. And with them came a nightmare. Once it had been an eagle, proud and free, but the trolls had broken it with dark sorcery, warping feather and bone until it was a monstrous thing. By fate's hand, only Lirath's company was near enough to answer. They had been hunting when the war cry rose, and there was only 7 of them. Arrows had already been spent on the chase, and though troll warriors fell swiftly beneath their bows, the shafts that struck true could not be retrieved. Too soon their quivers thinned. They steeled themselves to loose what remained, then draw steel and meet death in defense of their people. But Sylvanas Windrunner would not hear of it. Sylvanas knew this story by heart. She had grown up with it, heard it told by kin and lore masters alike. But never before had she heard it from the mouths of veterans, their voices tempered by awe. Emotions welled in her breast. Grief, admiration, love, and fear that she might never lead as her mother had. Lirath had held but a single arrow. Calmly, she asked each of her rangers for one of theirs until 7 rested in her hand. Then she commanded them to fall back, to guard the village and rouse its people, while she turned alone to face the enemy. They believed she meant to sacrifice herself, and despair gripped them. Yet this was Lirath. They should never have doubted. Scarcely had the rangers raised their defenses when the trolls came into view. The twisted dark eagle was not among them, and outpacing the enemy host was Lirath herself. To see her running ahead of the foe unbroken and unafraid was like sunlight piercing a storm. Morale surged like a rising tide. None who beheld it would ever forget. When the trolls reached the defenses, they were met with such fire and passion that their ranks shattered. Those who lived fled into the wilds, and not a single elven life was lost. When victory was won, Lirath led her rangers back to the place where she had stood alone. There, the dark eagle lay, enormous, hideous, dead. 1 arrow in each eye, 1 in its throat, and 4 clustered tightly in its heart. Ulrich Sunchaser, overcome, could not hold back his words. "You have slain this monster on your own." He lifted his gaze and smiled at Sylvanas as he finished the tale, as though to bind daughter and mother in one. But Lirath had shaken her head. She had pointed to the 7 arrows buried in the beast's corpse. 6 of them were given to her by her rangers. "No," she had said. "I succeeded because you lent me your strength." A respectful silence followed. Lorthamar finally spoke. "Lirath will never be replaced, but we are lucky that she will be succeeded by her daughter, continuing a very long line of Windrunner Ranger generals. We honor tradition, but we also are free-willed. We serve our people, but we are not servants. As was done in millennia past, I will ask and you will answer if you will follow Lady Sylvanas Windrunner, supporting and obeying her as you did her mother." Lorthamar nodded to Haldoran, who was first to reply, his voice clear. "Yes." The affirmation swept around the circle until it reached Helios. His voice cut through the unity like a blade. You speak of tradition, and that we have been led by a Windrunner for centuries, but we have also traditionally pledged ourselves to the Ranger General's eldest child. Which tradition is the true one? Many of us still believe that Ilaria should be given the title. Sylvanas' stomach dropped. Among the Farstriders, she had thought herself loved, if not universally at court. To be challenged here of all places left her fists clenched and anger burning hot. She was ready to defend herself, until Lor'themar spoke first. I believe that would be a mistake. Haldoran stepped forward to stand beside him. I would gladly have followed Ilaria Windrunner, had she wished to inherit the title, but she did not and made no secret of it. It was a source of friction that in the end splintered the Farstriders. Lady Sylvanas accepted the title, although it should never have been her responsibility, and she has not wavered. Lor'themar's voice rang clear. Which of you is unaware that within an hour of learning about her parents, Sylvanas was on her way to conduct an investigation into their deaths? We grieve the late Ranger General and Counselor deeply. How must she have felt? Yet she pushed aside her emotions and set herself to learning about the threat, as much to protect us as to bring closure to her family. Ilaria and those she left with have still not responded to the summons sent to her. Tears stung Sylvanas' eyes. She had thought the rift between her sister and her mother a secret, but of course the Farstriders, trained to listen and observe, had known. Yet Haldoran and Lor'themar spoke not out of duty but belief. They had seen her struggle, her resolve, and now they stood beside her, vouching for her with conviction. Still, Helios pressed on. As you say, Lady Ilaria has not yet replied. We should give her the chance to decline. It is her inheritance. Which she already abdicated years ago, Lor'themar reminded him. She might not have wished the title at the time, but now? No, everything is different now. We should delay until she can be reached. Lor'themar's brow darkened. I submit to you that in Lady Sylvanas we have the skill and temperament of her mother and the wisdom of her father. Ilaria chose the wider world. It is an admirable decision, but it does reflect her loyalties. Sylvanas, he turned to her, chose us. Before Sylvanas could draw breath, a voice rang from the doorway. I did choose the wider world, and Sylvanas did choose you. And it was the right decision. For the two of us, for the Farstriders, and for Quel'Thalas. Her heart seemed to stop. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as every head turned. Ilaria stood there, armor stained, face damp with sweat, dark circles ringing her eyes. Yet her gaze blazed with fire as she strode forward, bold and unbowed, to stand shoulder to shoulder with her sister. Varisa's smile broke through the solemn air like sunlight after storm. Ilaria leaned close and whispered, her voice breaking. I came as soon as I could. I should have been there for all of you. I'm sorry. You're here now, Sylvanas answered, blinking back tears of her own, and in Ilaria's eyes tears welled too. All at once, Sylvanas' anger and bitterness vanished. The grief would linger, the scars of absence never fully heal, but for this moment, the torment of separation ended. Ilaria turned to the gathered Farstriders, her voice carrying the authority of both sister and commander. I came here thinking to see the Farstriders uniting behind the leader our mother chose for you. Instead, you squabble like children, using my absence as an excuse to nurse your private grievances. That is not who we are. Her gaze pinned Helios, who pressed his lips together in disapproval. Ilaria's eyes sharpened. You wish to delay the vote until I responded? Here I am, Helios, and I tell you with my whole heart that I am where I am supposed to be to best help our home. And so is my sister. I am so glad she is here protecting Quel'Thalas, just as I was glad many years ago when she protected me and saved my life. Sylvanas' breath caught. Before all gathered, Ilaria acknowledged it. The day Sylvanas had broken the rules, spoiling her trial, saving her life, what once had been shame was now pride. Perhaps it had always been destiny. Ilaria's voice rose. Does anyone else request a formal vote? If so, let me cast the first yes in favor of my sister. Not a single hand lifted. Those who had sided with Helios now looked down, ashamed. Sylvanas drew herself tall, shoulders squared. She turned to Lor'themar, her voice steady. I am ready. The custom was as old as the Farstriders themselves. When a new Ranger General assumed command, they were expected to show their care for those they would one day lead in battle. Not with arrow or blade, but with a tray of food both humble and heartfelt. Cubes of cheese, fruit sliced into neat portions, bread cut into slender pieces. Ordinary fare, but rich in meaning, a gesture that leadership was not only command but service. On this day it was Verisa who prepared the tray for her sister. Then the three sisters went around and passed out the food, yet the room into which it was brought was already fractured. Helios's divisive words still hung in the air, and Illyria's sudden arrival had unsettled the company further. Though the ritual was completed, the warmth it was meant to kindle never took root. Hands accepted the food, but the air was brittle. When at last the tray was empty, the sisters seized their chance. For the first time in too long, the three slipped away together, eager for words that could be shared only in private. They walked side by side toward the Dragonhawk tetherlings, boots clicking softly against the stone. Around them, the evening air was cool and smelled faintly of hay and leather. For a time, there was only silence, until Illyria broke it, her voice touched with regret. "I would have been there had I known. I'm so sorry I didn't. Are you both all right?" Sylvanas' lips curved into a small wry smile. She gave a light laugh, though it carried a thread of steel. "Of course we are. We're Windrunners. We have to be." Verisa's expression softened, though her eyes lingered on her elder sister with longing. "It's good to see you, Illyria, even if only for a few moments. Are you sure you cannot stay longer?" Illyria shook her head, her voice heavy with duty. "I have to report to the king, and then return immediately to Lordaeron. But I will make time to visit the artist quarters and see our brother. Hopefully his majesty will listen to what I have to tell him." The word struck something in Sylvanas. She had held her tongue through the ceremony, but now, walking between her sisters, she could no longer keep silence. They deserved to know what others would not be told. "I'm not at all sure he will," she admitted. "He believes he is helping our people by not causing fear when nothing is yet certain. Trolls we understand. The Horde, we do not." Illyria's jaw tightened. "This news disappoints me. I thought better of him. Still, I must try." Verisa's voice, when it came, was quiet, tinged with sadness at hearing so much only now. "You didn't tell me, Sylvanas." Sylvanas' voice was steady, though her chest felt tight with the weight of truth too long unsaid. "I have not had a moment alone with you since learning of it. Lorthamar and a few others were at the site. They knew, even without evidence, that it was the Horde. Only Nathanos was with me when I found proof. I promised the king that I would remain loyal to him, but I am also loyal to you, my sisters, and I would have you at least know the truth." Illyria's expression grew somber, her eyes shadowed with sorrow. "We feared the worst when we heard the news." Verisa's voice slipped in, quiet but edged with worry. "But what about Lirath? Will you tell him too?" Sylvanas' gaze faltered, her eyes falling to the ground as if she could not bear to meet theirs. "One day, yes, but not now. I fear it will only damage him further, or make him take up arms and try to kill the whole Horde himself." Illyria tilted her head, curiosity and caution mingling in her look. "Are you sure? They were his parents, not just ours. He deserves to know, and if he wants to fight, why not train him?" It was Verisa who spoke then, her tone quiet but firm. "You asked me to stay with him after the funeral. He misses them, as we all do. But we have one another and the Farstriders. We have the chance to strike back. He does not." Sylvanas' lips curved into a faint testing smile. Brave words from one who has yet to make her first kill. Verisa flushed red, her voice trembling with frustration. "Lirath wants to belong. He wants to believe he still has a family. Illyria, you are gone now. You walk another path. Sylvanas and I see each other all the time. He is alone in Silvermoon." The words pierced Sylvanas deeper than she let on. "He will be glad to see you, Illyria, and I will visit him as well. We both will, Verisa. But do not tell him about mother and father." Illyria's voice grew firm, insistent. "I still think you should train him. He is smart and dexterous. He will learn quickly, now that he is a bit older." "But they did not know him as she did." They were there the day he was born, had watched Larissa place him into her arms, but only Sylvanas had leaned close enough to whisper a vow into his tiny ear. A promise no one else had heard. From that moment, Lirath had been hers to protect. His hands were made for string, for the bow of an instrument, not for the bow of war. To press a sword into them now, to draw him into bloodshed, would be a betrayal of that promise. The image of her parents' bodies, broken and cold on the ground, still haunted her. For Lirath, it would have shattered him. To let him see such a thing, to force him into that same world of grief and rage, intolerable. "No," she said softly, yet her voice carried a weight that silenced further debate. "He has suffered enough." Valeria exhaled, her shoulders sagging beneath the weight of resignation. "He is an adult, old enough to make his own choices, but train him or not as you will. In the meantime, I will not tell him about the attack. It should come from you, Sylvanas. Consider it, and think on training him too." Sylvanas gave a small nod, though it was only to soothe the moment, to keep peace between them. She had considered the matter already, turned it over in her mind like a blade catching the light. No more thought would be given. Her vow to Lirath was clear and unbroken. He would never need to defend himself. That was her burden, hers alone. After their words were spent, the three sisters embraced, holding on one another for a fleeting moment of closeness. Then Ilaria mounted her dragonhawk and took to the skies, bound for the king. Varisa returned to rejoin the Farstriders, while Sylvanas turned her steps toward Lor'themar and Haldoran, the weight of her decision pressing heavily upon her. As she walked, her thoughts strayed to gentler days, when she and her sisters would dance barefoot in the sunlight. Laughter bright as chimes, while their parents' presence made the world feel unshakably safe. And always there had been Lirath. His songs spun from grace and mystery, filling the air with a child's magic, as though nothing dark could ever touch them. But those days were gone. The light of their childhood had dimmed into memory, and where once she had twirled to music in the sun, now she walked beneath gathering shadows, burdened by choices that could divide her people and threaten her place among them. The memory of safety made the present all the harsher, and Sylvanas pressed forward, knowing there was no turning back. Her heart was steady, but she knew the choice she carried would not sit well with them, nor with others. Her footing in court was already precarious, and Helios's outburst had left the Farstriders divided. She should not have been stirring further waters, but her course was set. She would offer Nathanos a place among them. When she spoke the words aloud, their disbelief was plain. "Deadly," she answered curtly when asked if she was serious. Lor'themar blinked, incredulous. "But he is human." Sylvanas' reply was swift, sharp as a loosed arrow. "There is nothing in the code of the organization that says one must be Quel'Thalas to be a Farstrider. He is a good shot and tracker as either of you, and that is saying a great deal. He also brings an entirely different range of information, skill, and experience that can only serve us, which you have both just witnessed. Anasterian may not wish to frighten the populace, but that does not mean we cannot learn from these orcs who so..." She faltered, drawing a sharp breath as she realized her hand had clenched into a fist. Rage coiled in her chest, hot and unyielding. She forced herself to continue, voice lower but edged with iron. "Who struck at the heart of the things we hold dear, at civilized diplomacy, and just defense and protection of the populace." Lor'themar was the first to recover from his stunned silence. His voice was sharp, cold as a drawn blade. "Fine. Then let him teach us what he knows, or better yet, go back to Lordaeron and send someone else in his place. He is a braggart and a bully, and he has remained among us far too long already." Sylvanas' eyes narrowed, her voice rising in defense before the words had even finished leaving his lips. "He saved your life, and you would repay him by sneering?" Lor'themar did not flinch. His answer came measured, each syllable cutting with calm disdain. "I have expressed my gratitude many times, but truly, saving a life should not warrant such exceptional treatment. Looking out for one's comrade should not be considered remarkable behavior." It was Haldoran who stepped forward next, his tone softer though no less firm. "Sylvanas, no matter what title or position you squander upon him, Nathanos will never be accepted, not because he is human, but because he is this particular one. You do not stand on the most stable ground as it is, as has recently been brought home to you. There are others than Helios who would smile to see you fail. Sylvanas' voice hardened, defiance rising to meet their doubt. They will not be smiling if I do fail. I am the one who stands between them and death. Haldoran's patience frayed, anger edging into his words. We, Sylvanas, we stand between them. The Farstriders have had enough of strife. Please, do not bring anything unnecessary. Her fury broke loose, no longer contained. Anything? Unnecessary? She snapped. Nathanos is not a thing, Haldoran, and he is very necessary to us right now. Yet even as the words left her mouth, Sylvanas knew the truth buried beneath them. Nathanos was a skilled fighter, a capable tracker, a hunter whose instincts rivaled any of their own. But more than that, more than what he could offer the Farstriders, he was necessary to her. I will not relinquish him to the Alliance. Haldoran and Lorthamar were not there on the cold gray dawning of that first day without... She forced the thought aside, sealing it away before her face could betray the storm within. Even though she knew the choice would not be welcomed, even though the opposition was certain, her mind was fixed. She would offer Nathanos a place among the Farstriders. With the fire of that decision still burning in her chest, Sylvanas turned sharply and left them behind. She would find Nathanos and tell him herself. Sylvanas had thought Nathanos' loyalty unshakable, but even she was startled when he bristled at the honor she sought to bestow on him. I didn't ask you to make me a Farstrider, he said when she told him the news later that same day. Not long after, the two of them walked hand in hand around Lake Elrondar, their footsteps so light they barely disturbed the local wildlife along the shore. She admitted she had wanted to make him more, a ranger lord perhaps, but Nathanos only smirked, sharp and unyielding. You thought I'd leave if you didn't. That belief insults both my superior intelligence and my excellent vision. It was a retort only he could give, and it reassured her for all its sting. Sylvanas smiled at that, relieved at the certainty of knowing that he was willing to become a Farstrider, that someone she cared for at least wouldn't abandon her through death or disinterest. The latter he had always made clear, and the former, denied as they might, Nathanos was the equal of Haldoran and Lorthamar. He would not fall in battle. Yet even as she clung to that reassurance, she pushed others away. She had begun to send Varisa on assignments apart from her, not out of mistrust, but because the sight of her sister reminded Sylvanas too much of the life they had lost with their parents. The pain was easier to bear at a distance. She had spoken words of reconciliation to Alleria, but was not yet ready to make them real. And she avoided Lirath most of all. She could not risk collapsing under the weight of his pain. Both of them would fall then. Duty demanded distance, or so she told herself. She clung to that thought as she moved among her rangers, holding herself apart, steadying her mask of command. Then the horn call split the air, and smoke began to rise in the distance. Sylvanas' head snapped toward it. Fires, 4 of them, plumes of black curling above Eversong like a cruel omen. They were no accident. For the briefest moment, her mind flickered back to her mother's cool, exacting voice, to the sting of always standing in Alleria's shadow. How long ago that conversation felt now. I may be your second choice, Mother, but you will see that I am not second best. The words rose within her like armor, banishing hesitation, leaving only resolve. Moments later, she was astride a dragonhawk, the great beast's wings beating furiously as she soared toward the Farstrider encampment. Nathanos kept close at her flank, silent and steady. When she landed among the gathered rangers, smoke darkening the skies overhead, every eye turned to their new ranger general. Her gaze swept the rangers. Evacuating citizens is the top priority. I'll wager that you'll find not just the fires, but those who set them lurking in the edges of the forest. So do some cleanup of that mess as well. Then came the crisp orders. Haldoran, Lorthamar, tackle the 2 to the west. Take the spear unit. Helios, head south. Keep your eyes open. I do not think the trolls are acting alone. Helios frowned. You think it's the Horde? Sylvanas noticed the shift immediately. Every ranger, even Helios, glanced toward Nathanos. They would not welcome him as one of their own, but in this moment of danger, they looked to him, and that was enough. It is too bold for a typical troll attack. she said flatly. Nathanos, go with Helios. Hurry. He gave a curt nod, falling into place without a word, and the others, whatever their doubts, obeyed. Then the Horde struck. Orcs and trolls surged from the tree line, using fire and smoke as cover. The moment she dreaded was upon her. For an instant, panic whispered through her mind. What chance do I have? I have no battle of 7 arrows to give me strength. But hard on the heels of that debilitating thought was another. I have her training, her blood, and by the Sunwell, her will. The Farstriders took to the trees. The golden canopy of Quel'Thalas stood hushed, as though the trees themselves listened. Below, the orcs trampled carelessly, laughter coarse and jarring in so sacred a place. Their blackened armor bruised the forest with every step. Sylvanas lifted her hand. The Farstriders shifted as one, silent as dusk falling through the leaves. Her will moved through them like a current, steady and unseen. She gave the signal to her troops. Pick your target. Her gaze settled on the largest brute. Shoulders like stone, tusks the color of rotting ivory. He strode with the pride of a killer who delighted in ruin. In him, she saw the faceless archer who had struck down her mother. Her bow bent beneath the weight of grief and wrath. The string whispered and the arrow flew. It buried itself in the orc's eye. This one is for my father, she thought, even as her fingers closed on another arrow. The woods erupted. Bows thrummed like harp strings of war, and arrows fell in silver rain. Leaves trembled with the force of the volley. Laughter broke into howls of pain. One orc pitched forward with a shaft in his throat. Another reeled with an arrow sunk to the fletching in his chest. The Farstriders had struck true, swift, merciless, precise. Sylvanas shot again, her arrow slipping through an upraised hand into the heart beyond. Larissa had prepared her not for glory, but for moments such as this, the cold defense of their people. Yet grief whispered with every draw. With each arrow she remembered her parents, torn from her by these same marauders. Each shot was both vengeance and vow, spoken in steel and fletching. The first ambush shattered the orc's arrogance, but the forest did not fall silent for long. From deeper in the trees came more voices, harsh and guttural, forcing their way through the undergrowth. The Farstriders became phantoms in the boughs, arrows flashing, positions shifting, the enemy never certain from where death would strike. Sylvanas moved among them, her bowstring never idle. Each shot found its mark, yet her eyes could not ignore the toll. One ranger had slipped, branches failing her, and an axe found her before the ground did. Another stood with blood streaming down his thigh, defiant even as his strength ebbed. Fall back, get him clear, her voice cutting across the noise. I can still fight, he shouted back, face twisted with pain. She fixed him with a sharp glare. I will not waste another life today. Go. Reluctantly, he yielded. Others shifted to cover the gap as Sylvanas gave her orders, swift, decisive, each command placed like an arrow where it would strike best. A signal to the flank, a call for covering fire. The battle unfolded like a song she alone conducted. The orcs pressed with brute strength, and in the golden woods they were clumsy. Every tree a shield, every branch a weapon turned against them. One after another they fell beneath elven arrows, their war cries drowned by the Farstriders' relentless discipline. Yet for Sylvanas, the cries of her own wounded cut deeper than the clash of steel. These were not nameless soldiers, they were her kin, her comrades, guardians of the same home she swore to protect. Sylvanas pushed ever southward, bow in hand, her voice carrying commands through smoke and ruin. All along the forest line, other Farstriders fought under her orders, holding the Horde at bay. The air was thick, bitter with ash, yet no one faltered, not while their homes and families stood behind them. Her mind strayed to those very homes, to small villages where kin and friends had gathered in fear, to her family's spire still tended by those who had mourned Larissa and Vareth with bitter tears. The thought of them steeled her. And she remembered too, Lirath's voice, so pure when he sang the old laments of their people. Had he written one for their parents yet? She did not know. But when this war was done, she swore she would seek him out and hold him close. Elves could live for centuries, but today proved cruelly how fragile that promise was. Her first thought was always for her people. Sylvanas' insistence on evacuating the civilians had spared lives, and for that she was grateful. Yet the loss of so many graceful spires and golden groves struck deep. South of the river, vast swaths of forest now lay in ruin, but for Golden Mist Village, fortune had offered a natural shield, the Elrindar. Its wide waters blunted both flame and foe, and Sylvanas seized upon it. She spread her Farstriders along the banks, ordering them to cut down any horde foolish enough to attempt a crossing. Perhaps, she thought, the north might yet be saved. Movement stirred beyond the river. Sylvanas' eyes sharpened. 2 elven figures sprinting desperately for the shore. Trolls bounding after them with shrill, cackling laughter. She knew them at once. Varisa and Ilaria. Her fists dropped, and the command ran swift through her rangers. Arrows sang, and the trolls crashed lifeless into the undergrowth. Sylvanas lifted her bow in greeting, her voice ringing across the waters. "Welcome home, Ilaria! Now what is this trouble you've brought us?" "I did not bring it, Sylvanas," her elder sister called back, breath ragged but eyes fierce. "I had hoped to outrun it, but I do bring possible salvation. I must speak to the council." Sylvanas shook her head, repeating the same warning she had spoken once before, when Ilaria had come unannounced to these woods. "I do not know if they will listen." "They will listen," Ilaria said, her voice sharp with conviction. From her hand swung a sack, heavy and stained on the bottom, the round shape within pressed against the blood-soaked cloth. Sylvanas believed she knew what it was. "Orc?" Sylvanas asked hopefully. "Troll, but that will be enough." Without delay, Sylvanas secured her sister a dragonhawk for the journey. As Ilaria prepared to depart, Sylvanas' voice carried after her, firm and final. "Good luck. You will need it." For a heartbeat she lingered, eyes fixed on the path Ilaria had taken. Part of her longed to follow, to stand beside her, but duty anchored her here. The Ranger General turned back to the fray, her gaze sweeping across the chaos with the commander's eye. Smoke still rose from burning trees, but the orcs faltered under the elves' relentless precision. And then, the air split with new cries. From the skies above, griffin riders swooped down, hammers flashing, striking the horde with savage force. Their mounts wheeled and dove through the smoke, scattering orcs and trolls, lifting the hearts of those who fought below. For a moment, Sylvanas allowed herself the rarest gift in war: hope. With allies at their side, perhaps the tide could yet be turned. But then she looked up and gasped. A sound unlike any other rolled across the sky, a low, thrumming beat, growing heavier with each heartbeat. The branches shuddered, the very air seemed to sink beneath its weight. Not drums, not hoofbeats. Wings. Sylvanas' blood ran cold. "Fall back, fall back!" she cried, her command cutting across the uproar. The heavens split with fire. Golden leaves became kindling as a vast shadow blotted out the sun. A dragon roared, the sound drowning every other voice, and the air itself turned to flame. The careful ambush was gone, every ranger driven into open ground, every shadow burned away. Sylvanas knocked and loosed, the arrows struck true, yet the dragon's hide cast them off, as if they were no more than rain against stone. Doubt knotted her resolve. She had faced trolls, orcs, beasts from the forest depths, but this was different. This was fire itself given wings. Flame poured from above, crashing to the ground below, and the world dissolved into panic. There was a mad scramble as the Alliance and Farstriders ran full tilt to escape immolation from above. The dragon's fire rolled across the canopy in a searing tide, and what moments before had been ordered ranks dissolved into chaos. Warriors ducked beneath falling boughs, smoke stung the eyes of mages and archers alike, and the Farstriders were forced into open ground where no shadow could shelter them. The beast breath was so hot it could turn metal to liquid, a furnace wind that warped shields and blackened blades. Sylvanas shook off the daze, the shock of seeing 2 impossible things in as many minutes: griffin riders swooping to aid them, and a dragon summoned to destroy them. But just as quickly as the dragon had appeared, it was retreating along with the rest of the horde. She was finally able to find her kin through the smoke and ruin, forcing her way toward familiar voices. There, amid scorched earth and broken branches, she found a gathering of warriors. Her Farstriders, bloodied but alive, Alliance soldiers rallying in battered ranks, Ilaria, fierce even through ash-stained cheeks, and Turalyon, golden light still clinging to him like a halo amid the wreckage. The horde had fallen back, leaving fire and terror in their wake. Confusion rippled through the survivors, until Turalyon's voice cut through, grim with certainty. "They wish to demoralize," he said, gaze sweeping the ruin, "to sow fear." Sylvanas looked upon the blackened trees, upon the wounded gathered in clusters, upon the weary yet unbroken faces of her rangers. The horde might have kindled terror, but they had not broken her people. And so long as she stood, they never would. The fire smoldered long after the dragon had vanished, thick smoke hanging like a pall over the golden woods. Where once had stood proud trees and graceful homes, now lay ruin, branches blackened, stones cracked, and the air stinking of scorched flesh. The survivors moved among the wreckage with heavy steps, tending to the wounded, lifting the fallen, salvaging what little could be saved. Sylvanas walked among them, her bow still in hand, though the string had slackened. To each ranger she gave a nod, to each villager a word of solace. Grief pressed on her heart, grief for Lirath and Lirath, grief for the spires that would never rise again, grief for the people who would never see another dawn. But she did not let it show. To her Farstriders, she was still the Ranger General, unbent and unbroken. Lirath turned to Ilaria, her voice low. "I suppose this means you cannot stay." Ilaria shook her head regretfully. "It seems whenever my path leads me here, it leads me away just as quickly. Our family has experienced the cruelty of the Horde, but we must not allow others to suffer that fate if at all possible. There is no time to linger if Lord Ron is to have any warning at all." Sylvanas understood. She alone had seen Lirath and Lirath as they had fallen, broken beneath the Horde's blades. Her younger siblings had only seen the bodies afterwards, carefully arranged, wounds hidden by robes and softened by illusion magic. No, she would not wish that memory on anyone. Ilaria's eyes hardened. "We must follow the Horde back before they elude us again and have a chance to regroup." "Go swiftly then, sister," Sylvanas said. She embraced Ilaria, holding her for one fierce heartbeat before letting go. Lirath clung to their eldest sister, unwilling to release her, and Ilaria had to gently pry herself free. She smiled faintly, nodding as if to seal a vow, and then turned to retreat with a young paladin whose presence lit her path. Sylvanas stood watching for a moment longer, then turned to her younger sister. Lirath looked wary, her eyes too wide, her face too young to be stained with blood and ash. This had been her first true taste of war. She should not dwell on it, Sylvanas thought. Better that she feel useful, needed, purposeful. "Find some of your fellows," Sylvanas said. "Send them off in small groups to help extinguish fires in the places that need aid." Lirath nodded as expected. Sylvanas' voice softened. "You did well today. Mother would have been proud of you. I am." Lirath managed a small, tired smile. "She would have been proud of all of us. I wish she could have seen us fight together." Sylvanas allowed herself the briefest smile in return, though sorrow tugged at its edges. "Go on, little sister. I will make a sweep along the shoreline." And so they parted, Ilaria gone southward with Turalyon, Lirath scattering the rangers into the wounded forest, and Sylvanas turning alone toward the shore, her heart heavy, her duty unrelenting, and the shadow of home pulling her steps toward the Windrunner estate. Sylvanas was tired, but also still alert, her body strung tight from the battle. None of the sisters had spoken of it, but all had thought the same. Windrunner Village and the Spire had surely been targeted by trolls, by orcs, perhaps even by dragonfire. Lirath had drilled the household endlessly on evacuation practices, so Sylvanas hoped she would find it empty at worst, intact at best. But in her heart, she feared otherwise. The final clash had unfolded far too close to her family's home, and the walk was short. Ash clung thick upon the earth, muffling every sound as snow might. Smoke still lingered, clouding her sharp eyes. She slowed as she neared the familiar slopes, expecting to be challenged by scouts stationed on the outskirts. None appeared. The silence pressed upon her like a weight. Sylvanas raised her horn and blew a long, mournful note. Its echoes faded, unanswered. "Please let there be survivors." Her plea went unanswered. The first body she found was that of a ranger, his bow shattered, his throat cut. Beyond him lay a mother and child, their lifeless forms huddled together where they had tried to flee. Each step revealed more, neighbors she had known, villagers she had sworn to protect, their blood staining the golden leaves. The further she walked into Windrunner Village, the heavier her heart grew, until the silence itself felt like a scream. Then through the haze, she glimpsed a figure lying face down amid the scorched grass. Relief pricked her heart. Tall and lean like Lirath, but clad in leather armor. Not Lirath, she told herself. Her little brother would never have been armed for war. For one breath, she clung to that certainty. But as she drew closer, unease returned. His hair shone with the luster of molten gold, unchanged by death's touch. And recognition she had fought to deny struck her with merciless force. Blood pooled beneath him, still fresh, marking that he had lingered long after the blow had fallen. Her pace slowed, every step a weight. She averted her eyes, unwilling to look upon the face she already knew was his. Her heart had been broken once before, when she had stood over the bodies of her mother and father. She had thought it could not hurt more than that. Now she knew she had been wrong. Her legs buckled beneath her, and she sank beside him. She gathered her little lord son, lifting his head into her lap as if the simple act could shield him still. Sylvanas could not weep. Her heart seemed torn open, spilling every feeling at once. Fury at the Horde's cruelty, sorrow for a life stolen, a fleeting relief that his struggle was ended, and a crushing regret that she had failed to protect him and those around her. She looked down at her brother's face, pale against her knees, and the only words that found their way past her lips were a broken whisper. "My little lord son." Then the memory of when Lirath was a baby and she held him for the first time appeared in her mind. The small child who had looked up at her with unclouded blue eyes, and the vow she had whispered in that hour. "I will never hurt you, ever, and no one else will either. With love and courage, I will keep you safe." Everything she feared had come to pass. Sylvanas cradled her little brother, the one she had sworn to protect above all else. She had made a promise that no harm would ever come to him. But that promise wasn't just broken, it was shattered into a million pieces. As she looked around, the weight of her failure pressed down on her. She had let everyone down. The boy in her arms, the one she believed was safe behind the city walls, lay lifeless. An axe wound marked his back. His torn hands and the dark trail in the grass betrayed the truth. He had fought to live, had dragged himself forward until strength abandoned him. It hadn't been a quick death. Everything he could have been, everything he could have done, was gone. Regret tore through her as she thought of all the things she never said. How sorry she was, how she had only ever wanted to protect him. How much he meant to her. He had been the most important person in her life, and now he would never share his gift again. His voice. So full of life, capable of making people forget their troubles, even for just a few moments. He didn't need to be a warrior. He had been perfect just as he was. But it was too late. She would never have the chance to tell him any of it. She just wanted this to be a terrible nightmare that she would wake up from any second. But as the silence drifted on, and she stayed with Lirath lifeless in her lap, all she could do was hold him, one last time. At last her lips parted, and song emerged. Low at first, then carrying into the smoke. The ancient strain of the Lament of the Highborn. It was a requiem older than the kingdom itself, sung for every child of Quel'Thalas who had been taken before their time. Her voice lingered on the final note, the requiem carrying into silence. What kept her standing was the cage she built within, where grief could not escape. She worked in silence, hands steady as she tended Lirath's body, wiping away blood, straightening torn clothes, setting him with the dignity the Horde had tried to steal. The memory of her parents' desecration smoldered in her mind. She would not allow the same fate for her brother. When the last small mercy was done, she rose and returned to the rangers who had straggled back from the field. For a heartbeat, she thought of Verisa. Little Moon should hear it first. But she set the impulse aside. Others needed her now. Verisa would hear it later, in private. She faced the Farstriders and spoke like a commander giving a report. Windrunner village had been struck from behind. Many lay dead. She named those she could, each name laid down like a stone. Others were too mutilated to identify. Haldoran answered with the steadiness she relied on, grief plain in the lines of his face. He pledged that the fallen would be gathered and honored, that rites would be kept even here among ash. Nathanos stepped closer, hesitation in his eyes. He meant to guide her to Lirath's body, to prepare her for the sight. But Sylvanas' voice cut through, low and cold. I know. Who do you think covered him? Her words struck hard, silencing him where he stood. She had already seen her brother, already had to deal with that weight alone. Her gaze shifted, hardening as memory filled the silence. He was trained, she said, her voice flat, stripped of everything but truth. He was wearing archer's armor. It fit him well and was not new, but not damaged. Every detail had seared itself into her mind. The way the leather clung to his frame, the faint polish of wear without the scars of battle, the posture of one who had practiced, but not yet been tested. Someone had prepared him for this, and in doing so had led him to his death. The words of her sisters floated back to her. Valeria's confident tone rang in her memory. He will learn quickly, now that he is a bit older. Sylvanas' gaze dropped to the place where she had left her brother, and her answer came as a whisper. Just not quickly enough. Only for her ears, only for his, if her brother's spirit lingered here. Had she trained him from youth, Lirath might have known when to strike and when to retreat. He might have survived. Yet, had she never allowed him to be taught, he would have remained safe in Silvermoon. The thought seared her as she closed her eyes, then forced them open again. Had someone not indulged Lirath's fantasy of being a warrior, my brother would be alive. Sylvanas said, her words sharp as daggers. Whoever did this is as responsible as the creatures who buried the axe in his back. A sobbing gasp broke the air. Sylvanas turned. Verisa stood rigid, pale hair and wide eyes fixed on the covered body. For a heartbeat, she looked as fragile as porcelain, a memory from their childhood rushing back unbidden. Something lovely, broken. We are Windrunners. We are not fragile. We will not shatter. Verisa, look at me. Sylvanas. Please. Please tell me it is not. It's not. It is Lirath. There was no reason to soften the truth. Morning could come later. Now there was only the need to find who had planted fatal dreams in her brother's heart. Verisa swayed, and Sylvanas' hand clamped hard on her arm. She shook her sister, rough, unyielding. Don't you dare, she hissed. Stay strong. Stay angry. Tears streaked Verisa's pale cheeks as she choked out. Little Lord, son. No, Sylvanas snapped, her own voice threatening to break. Not now. Do you hear me? She could bury a body, even Lirath's, but if she let memory in, if she thought of their childhood, of that nickname whispered long ago, she would shatter, and she could not. Not until the orcs were punished, not until she uncovered the hand that had trained her brother for a death he was never meant to face. Verisa nodded, swallowing hard, trying to mirror Sylvanas' steel. She could not know how fragile that armor truly was. Yet when Sylvanas spoke again, her voice cut clear and strong. Verisa, listen to me. Our brother must have justice. We must find the one who trained him. Do you agree? Verisa stilled, tears brimming yet held back. Her lips pressed thin before she answered, I do. Her voice rang clear, stronger than before. Then, to Sylvanas' shock, her sister crumpled to her knees. His blood is on my hands. For a heartbeat, Sylvanas could not comprehend it. Of course they both bore guilt. Either of them should have guarded him more fiercely. But when she met Verisa's eyes, the truth struck. You. I trained him, Sylvanas. It is my fault he is dead. The words seared like fire. Lirath's own sister confessing what Sylvanas had dreaded. Rage boiled inside, but before she could act, Nathanos seized her wrist in an iron grip. Lorthamar pulled Verisa away, holding her fast. He looked at Sylvanas, not in defiance, but with pain, with empathy, with anger all at once. This is not a place for rage, Nathanos said quietly. Oh yes it is, Sylvanas snarled. How many times could a heart break and still go on beating, forcing her to endure the torment of loss? Look me in the eye and tell me what your brother would say, Nathanos whispered. How dare you? She cried, but the seed was planted. She could not unsee Lirath's face, nor silence the unspoken plea in it, to stop, to think, to remember that they were family, and that Veresa's choice had been born out of love and courage, just as hers had. For one mad instant, she hated him for it. Lor'themar guided a trembling Veresa away, glancing back at Sylvanas with concern rather than reproach. Keep her away from me, Lor'themar, Sylvanas called. Keep her away. Keep her away for now, perhaps forever. For Veresa's sake, and her own. Lirath was buried beside their parents in the family plot. The king and prince had offered a formal funeral, but Sylvanas refused. Her parents had been national figures, forced into public mourning. Lirath was different, a royal musician, yes, but still her brother, not a banner for all of Quel'Thalas. His farewell would be private, for family and those few who had truly loved him. She could not bear to reopen the wound so soon. The gathering was small, herself, a handful of Farstriders, and to her surprise, Lord Saltharil. She had nearly barred him. But even with all his faults, he had cared for Lirath and guided him in his way. Later, she would remember almost nothing of the rites, only how bare the earth still lay over 3 graves. Her parents, taken in duty. Lirath, taken for nothing. He had not been bound to battle, nor suited for training. He had deserved more than this. As the mourners thinned, a familiar voice called her name. Veresa looked worn thin by sorrow, her face hollow, eyes rimmed with shadow, hair once radiant, now hanging lifeless around her shoulders. Sylvanas thought she must look the same. Her sister stopped before her, head bowed. Nathanos stepped between them, ready to shield one sister from the other. Nathanos, Sylvanas said. It's all right. Let her speak with me. My hand is still cramped from the last time you two spoke, he muttered. There are things I must understand, she answered. Reluctantly, he withdrew, leaving them alone by the graves. Why? Sylvanas had thought 1,000 accusations would pour out, but only that single word escaped. Because he needed us, and we weren't there, Veresa said softly. He had always felt different, that he didn't quite fit with us, that what we did was more important and, in a way, what it meant to be a Windrunner. Sylvanas stayed silent, listening, jaw tight. Ilaria said it so casually, so confidently. Sylvanas, when you said you would consider it, Her teeth ground together. She had spoken those words, but never as consent. At last, she forced her voice out. You knew I feared for him. You knew how badly I wanted. I needed to know he was safe. I don't think I did, Veresa admitted. I don't think you let others know how deeply you cared. I wanted him to be safe too, in his heart as well as in body. You didn't see him light up when he began to improve. And then a memory of something Lirath said came into her mind. But, Lady Moon, you are sometimes too single-minded. People will end up getting hurt. Lirath had known it too, and in the end, it was he who paid the price. Ilaria with her certainty had judged from afar, forgetting that siblings grow and change. Veresa, ever the peacemaker, had sought harmony, and in doing so had opened the door to death. And she, Sylvanas, she carried perhaps the heaviest guilt of all. She could not bear the weight of that truth, not now, perhaps not ever. One day, she told herself, she and Little Moon might speak again, free of shadow, as Lirath would have wished. But that day was not this one. As your Ranger General, I can tell you that it is your choice to stay and serve. I will not deprive our people of anyone who can defend them. But as your sister, I ask that you leave me be. Veresa's reply came soft and sorrowful, her spirit dimmed. I will. I will not come to you again. I see now it is of no use. It would seem neither you nor I have any more of our hearts left to wound, or to give. Following her interaction with Farisa, Sylvanas turned grief into steel. The Farstriders became her sharpening stone, honed under merciless trials. She broke them into pairs and trios, sent them barefoot into wild country with nothing but the clothes on their backs, forced marches that stretched until stars blurred above their heads. At times, she twisted the tests further, lacing their drink with sedatives midway, casting down any who could not endure. She demanded of them what she demanded of herself. Everything. When word reached Lorthamar, his voice was heavy. Sylvanas, you need to stop. Stop what? Stop punishing everyone, including yourself, for what happened with... Don't. The word cut sharper than any blade. Lorthamar held her gaze, his tone still steady. These are your people, your soldiers. They are here because they are loyal to you and to your kingdom. You must not treat them this way. Her answer came swift, fierce, unrelenting. Yet somehow, the best of the best and the Alliance who aided us managed to let orcs slip into the heart of our nation and kill hundreds, including Lirath. I demand nothing from them I do not ask of myself, and you know this. They are tough. They can fight. And they will fight, Lorthamar. They will, and some of them will die. She clenched her jaw, memory pressing like a blade. Her brother's blood, the ash across her homeland. But it won't be because I failed to train them properly. It won't be because they didn't learn to expect the unexpected, to push themselves past what they thought they could do, to excel in every area, and in the end, if only a handful can see this and understand it, I will take those few over the 1,000 who do not. Her eyes narrowed, her voice turning softer but sharper still. Including you, old friend. The silence stretched taut until Lorthamar dipped his head. I will do as my Ranger General commands. So be it. Let the weak fall away. Let whispers circle behind her back. She cared nothing for friendship. She was their general. The ones who endured, who bent themselves to her command, would be forged into legends, unstoppable, unkillable. The stillness shifted. She felt his presence without turning. Go back to the fire, Sylvanas said. I don't want to. I don't need you. You damn well do. Neither yielded, and without a word, Sylvanas sprang forward. Nathanos followed, marching her stride as she tore through the woods, vaulting roots, scaling trunks, leaping from branch to branch until her muscles burned and shook. Still, she drove herself onward. And still, he was there, this strange human who seemed to read her heart better than her own kin. At last, as night bled into dawn, she fell to the earth and gazed upward. The stars were gone. They would not dance here again. A sound broke from her, sharp, ragged, and for a stunned instant, Sylvanas did not realize it came from her own throat. Grief tore through the cage she had built, ripping sobs from her chest until her face was wet and her voice raw. She bent beneath the weight of it, unable to contain the storm any longer. Arms closed around her, solid, unyielding. Nathanos. She clung to him as if he were the only anchor in a world collapsing into ash and memory. He said nothing, offered no hollow comforts, only his presence, a wall against the tide. Madness whispered to her, tempting in its promise, no memory, no love, no brightness to be broken. For a heartbeat she longed to yield, but Nathanos, stubborn and fleshbound, gave her a choice. To hold or to let go, she clung all the harder. She lifted her tear-streaked face, and he brushed the wetness away, but Sylvanas wanted no softness. She wanted something fierce enough to drown the ache, to remind her she still lived. Her lips found his in a desperate, consuming kiss, and he answered, drawing her to him with equal fire. And for one fleeting moment, Sylvanas Windrunner allowed herself the gift of forgetting, and the world was still. Now, normally at this point I would do my regular outro and we would all go about our merry way, and hopefully y'all would have a fantastic day or night and I would hope that you would take care of yourself. But this is a different case. If it wasn't evident by some of the voice lines, this video was probably the hardest for me to record ever. Outside of probably the first time I recorded Lirath's video solo. And I wanted to ask everyone a question. If you're able to or want to leave a comment about this, that'd be great. But what would you have done? Would you have gone with Sylvanas? Would you have sided with Sylvanas and said not to train Lirath? Or would you have gone Vereesa's route and train him? Personally, I think I would have gone with Vereesa, because in a world, I mean, with that much fighting and war and in a family full of rangers, I don't think it's a bad idea to have him be trained. Whether he would go into being a Farstrider, I mean, 50-50, but I would say at least train him, that way he has the skills. And maybe he would have, like Sylvanas thought, known when to run away and could have survived. But at the same time, I can see Sylvanas' side of it where, with making that vow to Lirath when he was born, if I was her, I definitely would have explained more for sure, but he was dead set on learning, and if there's one thing I've learned through life is that if someone's made up their mind, they're gonna find a way. So if Vereesa didn't train him, I'm pretty sure he would have, honestly, probably just started training on his own, or asking one of the other Farstriders or something. But yeah, I was just curious. So if you made it this far, thank you. It's a very long video, and I feel like people have better things to do than to listen to me talk about a cool character, but but either way, thank you for checking it out, and I hope you did enjoy. And please do take care of yourself. And also, if you did enjoy this video and you made it this far, maybe consider giving it a like, possibly subscribe if you're not. But either way, hopefully I'll see you in the next one. And please do take care of yourself. You're doing great.